schedule of classes and events in the little booklet up here. We have fall 2025, so in case anybody wants that. Okay, so my name is Marianne Drace, and I am a volunteer with the Western New York chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. I am a volunteer community educator, but I'm also a retired nurse, and a lot of my career was spent with the older adult population, and I did a good amount of work in a program that was a PACE program of all-inclusive care for the elderly. So we had a lot of people with dementia, and we had a memory care unit in our facility. Also took care of people who were in an assisted living, in the home, in the nursing home. So we dealt with their families and the people with dementia. But even better than that, my father had dementia. And there's nothing better than personal experience taking care of someone with dementia. It's absolutely wonderful to have professional experience. It helps a whole lot. You can be a better advocate because you know when to grab people by the throat. But it does not protect you. It does not protect you from the anguish that is taking care of someone that you love with dementia. And it is I'm just going to do a brief overview here, is that dementia, any kind of dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's Lewy body, whether it's Parkinson's, whether it's vascular, they are all terminal. There is no way out of dementia at this point in time. There's no medication, there's nothing that you can do. It's going to take its course. There are medications now to slow it down, but there's nothing right now that will keep it from being a terminal disease. That does not mean that you cannot have a great relationship with the people who have dementia. I will say, taking care of my father was taking care of my father was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. But I had many, many, many wonderful moments taking care of him and my mother and my aunt. It's a joyous time. But you can have really good times as well. So we came up with this Empowered Caregiver series in order to help people to do that, to be as skilled as possible, as knowledgeable as possible, so that you can have all of those good times. A couple of things we always say is the main focus for you is you want your person to be safe and happy. Safe and happy. Another thing is we steal from Elsa in Enchanted, let it go. There are so many things you're going to need to let go of. You're going to need to let go of perfection. You're going to need to let go of right and wrong. You're going to need to let go of what day it is, what time it is, what year it is, what season it is. It ain't going to matter as long as your person is safe and happy. You're not going to do 100% of the time. Everything isn't going to work out right. We're going to give you lots of tools. Doesn't mean they're always going to work. I look back, and there are many times I say to myself, I wish I had done this, I wish I had done that, but then I stop and I say, I did the very best that I could. And I think that's the most you can ask of any caregiver, is you do the very best that you can. Dementia is a crazy, crazy disease. It's the brain and brain cells being killed off. Now the brain controls every single thing about us. It controls what we see, what we think, what we feel, what we hear. It controls our heart, it controls our breathing, it controls when we walk. So when you start to destroy those cells in the brain, all of those things are affected. Initially, it's memory, thinking, and behavior, but it goes further than that. And that's when you can get some of these behaviors. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is what are the behaviors? What are some of the main behaviors that fall across all groups? And then what are some of the things that may cause those behaviors? And then what can we do about that? How can we address those behaviors? So we're going to talk about how dementia causes changes. We're going to look at the triggers. We're going to compare medical versus non-medical ways to address behaviors. And then we're going to talk about this 4-step approach to help you with that. And what we're giving you is hopefully hopefully tools. But the most important thing in helping somebody with dementia is that the person who's the caregiver knows them. They know their likes and dislikes. They know their routines. They know their habits. So you're going to take these tools and adapt them to what you know about your person. That's going to be very, very important. So what is dementia-related behavior? Well, it's like an alarm going off. The person has some kind of unmet need. Something's happening within them. They need to have it addressed, but they don't have the ability anymore to clearly identify it within themselves and to verbalize it to you, to say what it is that's triggering them, that's bothering them. And so it comes out in behavior. So another thing, personally, I do like Agatha Christie. Hopefully you like mysteries, because this is a big mystery, and your job is going to be on a regular basis to try and solve it. Solve what's going on with it. Try to figure out, look at clues, see if you can figure out what's happening, and then figure out the best way to address it. So they say that they may have good and bad days. They will have good and bad days. They will have good and bad hours. You will think everything's going along great, and then all of a sudden, all blazes breaks loose, and then they'll go back to being good again. It's the brain and what's happening in the brain. Sometimes those connections are being made, and sometimes those connections are not being made. There's no way to tell when that's going to happen. So you got to be on your toes. This is very important and really, really hard. The person living with dementia cannot control their behavior. They look perfect for a very long time. They look like the person you've known for a long time. They don't look like anything is wrong with them, and therefore when they have some kind of a behavior, they say something, they accuse you of something, it's like a gut punch, and you do take it personally. But you have to keep saying to yourself, it is the disease of the brain, and they cannot help it. It's just as if they had cancer or they had some type of cardiac disease. It's the organ, the brain organ is taking over, and it's not the person. And it really is very challenging. I just did this class for my cousin. I did a one-on-one because her husband has dementia, and he's going into the later stage now, and it's very difficult for her. And she's a former engineer, and is very used to precision, and things have to be correct. And this has been one of the hardest things for her, is to stop correcting him and to stop making sure that everything is absolutely perfect, because it can't be anymore. He can't do perfection. He can't even do close to perfection. So it's important to keep understanding that it's the brain that's doing this, it's the brain that's doing this, it's not the person, and try as hard as you can to not take it personally. So as I said, the disease, whatever it is, whatever type of dementia, is causing the cells in the brain to break down. And that makes it harder for them to understand. When you and I, a good example, I actually use this because this happened with him, is we're asleep at night, we have a dream, we wake up in the morning, and sometimes it feels like it's real, like you're still in that dream. But given a couple of minutes, your brain takes over, and your brain looks around, and your brain sees where we are and what's happening, and goes back to the dream and says, well, there's no way in the world that could have really happened. And so now you say to yourself, okay, I understand now. That was a dream. It felt real, but it was a dream. Somebody with dementia does not have that ability all the time to rationalize and understand that that was a dream. So sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes they wake up from a nap or whatever, and they feel that the dream is continuing. But that's a good example of how they cannot interpret the world around them. My father, and I apologize if you've heard this one before, my father, we were driving one day, and everything outside was green. The trees were full of green leaves. The lawns were all green. There were flowers. We were both wearing very light clothing. I was driving, he was passengering. he said to me, "We are so lucky. We are having the most mild winter I can remember." Now, I thought he was joking because my father had a very unusual sense of humor. He said it a couple more times and I realized he was not joking. He could not take all of those clues and put it together into what season it was. So for the rest of his life, he was in winter, and most of the time we were having a very mild winter. So those are examples of how the brain cannot take normal clues and put it into the world around them, which makes it harder for you because you don't necessarily know what that world is. So that's where you have to start getting some clues and asking some questions or figuring out what's going on. But you do not want to continue, and this is something that you kind of do by trial and error. We will say to you that you enter their world, you don't make them enter our world. And for the most part, that's true. But you play that by ear. So I'm not telling you that every day, every hour, every minute of every day, you should necessarily be therapeutically fibbing to someone. It depends. Examples, if somebody, their spouse has died and they don't remember it. This happened with my father, and the first time I told him was the last time I reminded him that my mother had died, because we weren't going through that again. So from then on, I told him she was at the doctor's, she was visiting somebody, she was somewhere else, and we would just move on. But that doesn't mean that every time he thought something was happening, I didn't necessarily have to go along with it. What we're saying is, don't fight with somebody over their reality, because you won't win. Because their reality is as clear to them as ours is to us. So somebody's not going to talk me out of explaining where I am right now, that I'm here at Stella Niagara. Bless you. So to try to do it is just going to agitate that person, and what that does is it also breaks down the trust that they have in you, because you're trying to tell them something that isn't true. So you need to balance that out and figure out when is the time I need to step in and say, this is where we are, as opposed to, hey, all right, if that's what you think, then yes, you're right. Just one more quick story, and then I'll go to the expert. My father had hallucinations, delusions, mostly hallucinations, for a very long time. And then toward the end, he had a very, very big stroke, and his left side was on bed-bound, he was bedbound. But I was used to him seeing people and talking to them, and I always would say to him, are they saying anything that upsets you? And he would always say, no, everything's fine, they're fine. So one day, we were in his new makeshift bedroom. He was in his bed, and he was talking to someone. I think it was my grandmother, I can't be sure now. And so I was going along with him. And so I looked over in the corner and I asked a question or made a statement, I don't know what, and my father said to me, she's not there, you don't see her, do you? And I thought, oh man, I'm stuck now. So I said to him, no, I actually don't see her. That's not that I don't believe that you do. I just don't. I believe that for whatever reason, right now I can't see her, but I do believe that you can see her. And he was absolutely fine with that. So you go along, you get caught, you acknowledge, you move on. All right. So here's our expert.
Changes in the brain that occur with Alzheimer's and other dementias then can impact on somebody's cognition, their functioning, and also their behavior. Now, these changes aren't consistent over time, but they can vary. They can vary day by day, and then they can also vary as the disease progresses.
Individuals living with dementia can have trouble understanding the world around them. And unfortunately, that could lead to them not knowing what's real, what's safe, or what's appropriate. That uncertainty then sometimes leads to dementia-related behaviors.
And the scary thing is that their interpretation of the world and the things around them may cause them to be unsafe. So that's why we need to be doing as much of an investigation into their behaviors as possible. So absolutely, behavior is a form of communication. We've all done it throughout our lives. We've had behaviors. If you've ever been really annoyed with somebody, and you don't necessarily feel like confronting them, sometimes our behaviors show them that we're annoyed with them. It's our body language, it's turning away from them, it's giving them short answers as opposed to what we would normally do. So we've all done this type of thing where we use a behavior instead of words. Unfortunately, with people with dementia, it's not necessarily a choice. It's the fact that they cannot understand exactly what's happening, exactly why they're anxious or agitated or worried or whatever, and so it comes out in a behavior. But something is missing, something is a problem for them, and they're trying to get it addressed. So you have to connect with them to figure out what it is they're trying to tell you with their behavior. So that's where all the sleuthing comes in. And again, trying not to take it personally. My mother had a level of mild cognitive impairment as well, and at one point she accused me of stealing her shoes. I have a size 9 foot, she had a size 7 foot. There was no way in the world I could do anything with her shoes. So the first time it was a little offensive, but then I realized, okay, she just lost them somewhere, so we went to look for them. So the common dementia-related behaviors are, we're going to look at 4. Anxiety and agitation. And this is when the person may be looking particularly restless. They may pace, they may do repetitive motions with their hands or their feet. Aggression and anger. This can be verbal or physical. This is something to be concerned about. There are some people that can be very physical, and that can be unsafe for them and for people around them. So that's something absolutely we want to keep an eye on. Suspicion and delusions. This happens very frequently. Part of it is short-term memory problems where they don't remember changes have taken place, and so when they look for something that's not there anymore, they know they didn't do it, then somebody else had to do it. Getting lost or wandering. The person may walk or move around. They may leave. They may try to go somewhere, something that they've never done before. And this is something we say is, people will say, oh, my person doesn't wander. And we always say, until they do. Until they do. So you need to be very aware that these things could happen.
My mother did experience some degree of suspicion, and this is a rather long and involved story, but my name is Freddie James. My father's name was Fred James, and shortly after he died, my mother accused me actually of stealing some money, of going to the bank and actually using my father's name and my name, the similarity, to take some money, which absolutely had not happened, but this suspicion had developed in her mind. It took a lot of patience, it took a lot of explaining, but eventually it just took letting the situation die down, not getting too involved in it myself. In other words, not reacting in anger, not reacting with a lot of emotion, but just allowing her to work through the process.
So we like to do quizzes. Wandering only happens in the early stage of the disease. How many think that's true? That's good. Nobody thinks that's true? Wandering is only in the early stages? That's good. Because it is indeed false. It happens at any time, and about 60% of people with dementia will wander. It could be just wandering around the house. It could be wandering down the street. It could be in a car and wandering. There are varying degrees of it, and it's scary. It's very scary when that happens. So just to know that there are a lot of great resources on the Alzheimer's website for safety in case somebody is wandering or getting to the later stages and you're worried about that, or they're displaying those kinds of behaviors. There's a lot of modifications you can do, a lot of ways you can track people nowadays, a lot of things you can do to feel safer about your person. So what might happen? What might be causing some of these behaviors? So we broke them down into 2 areas, external and internal. external being something outside of the emotions of the person. So it could be pain, discomfort, it could have, this is common, as I mentioned with my father and not understanding what season it was. Some people will dress very inappropriately. They may wear 5 layers of clothing, which may make them extremely uncomfortable. They may have shoes that are now well worn, but they're their favorite shoes, and they're going to wear them no matter what, and they may end up with blisters from something like that. It may be that they're hungry, or they're thirsty, or they're tired. So those are physical things that may happen. This is a big one, social. It may include being around people who stress or bother them. Could be that at other points in their lives there was people that bother them, that they were just able to be polite and take for a short period of time and then maybe make an excuse and move on, and that doesn't happen now. It may be that somebody has a high-pitched voice that now is very upsetting to them. It may be somebody that mumbles. There's all kinds of things that can now cause a problem for somebody with dementia. It could be too many people around. The brain, they get pretty tired because their brain is working so much harder, trying to find connections, trying to figure out what's happening in the world. And when you think about your normal environment and you think about light and shadows and noises and people breathing, just people breathing can be a noise. So their brain is constantly trying to figure out what all these things are to make them feel comfortable where they are. That may exhaust them, and so that may be overwhelming to them. Again, too much noise, bright lights can be a problem. And then there's internal. So it could be, this is also something that's really kind of sad. The whole thing is sad, but this is really kind of sad. People don't realize how lonely people with dementia are. They start early on to bring themselves apart from other people because of their short-term memory problems, because they have a problem finding words. They don't want to be in situations anymore where people keep saying to them, "Don't you remember I just told you that? Don't you remember we were just there yesterday?" They don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to be in a conversation where they forget who they're talking to. They forget what they're saying. They can't find words, so they isolate. They self-isolate. And then on top of that, other people are not necessarily comfortable with people with dementia. And once they know about it, they may not want to come over anymore. They may not want to be with that person because they're afraid they'll say the wrong thing, or they don't know how to respond to somebody. So their world becomes very, very small. And social interactions are really important for people, very important for their well-being. So people with dementia often are very, very isolated, and that loneliness comes out in behaviors. So that's one for sure to be looking at. And boredom. Oh my goodness. I'll tell you something interesting that and this is just anecdotal, but a lot of older people with dementia like watching black and white TV. So cozy TV is very big. And oddly enough, the Westerns seem to be really big for people. They can sit there for the entire day watching Gunsmoke. So just be aware of what their habits are. So non-medical approaches to dementia-related behaviors. So we're going to talk about that first, because that's what you always want to do first, is do something non-medical. So that's looking at giving them physical and emotional comfort, remember, happy and safe. So this approach can help identify and meet the needs of the person who cannot express themselves. So this is where you're going to use what you know about that person. And this is regardless of whether they're home or whether they're in a facility. A lot of it has to do with scheduling. People with dementia can't necessarily tell you what the schedule should be, but they definitely know when it's out of whack. And it definitely bothers them when their schedule is changed. Any type of change can be disruptive to somebody with dementia. They do look for a consistency. So the 4-step approach is to first detect and connect with your person. You want to make sure physically that you address anything physical first. So anything that could be causing them physical harm, you want to make sure that that's taken care of. Then you move on to anything that could be emotional, and then you review and you plan for next time, because there will be a next time. There will be many next times. So what you want to have is a plan that has what I'm going to do, plan A, plan B, and plan C, so that you've at least got 3 things that you can try. Hopefully one of those 3 will work. Sometimes none of them work, and then the next time the first one works beautifully. So you just want to be aware that it is going to happen again. So detecting and connecting, absolutely. You know what you use what you know about the person to try to understand their feelings or their needs. So what is their schedule? Could that be out of whack? This happens a lot with people who move, or people that are now in a facility and their schedule is changed or their food is changed. So you want to be aware of that. People often are put into a nursing home, for example, even a lovely one with a beautiful memory care unit. You know, they may have a schedule on the unit, and what you want to make sure of is that they're aware of your person's schedule. Do they like to shower at night, and now they're being forced to take a bath in the morning? That's not going to work with people. So you want to make sure that you can figure out as much as possible about what would be normal for them. Yes, you want to join them in their reality as much as you can. Don't try to fight with them and bring them into ours. It's really not important that they know all of those things that are person, place, and thing. You don't necessarily have to reorient them. Approach them calmly, quietly, and with respect as you figure it out. So you do want to use a lot of eye contact, physical contact if they're up for it. You know, nice gentle hand on the shoulder can be very comforting to somebody. On the same level, I used to watch doctors when they were giving news to patients. I worked in oncology, and the ones that I would consider were successful were the ones who went into the room and sat down, and they were at eye level with somebody, and they didn't look like they were about to leave any minute. They looked like they were there to answer any questions that somebody had. So that's what you want. Do you have a question?
Just add a comment.
Mhm.
With regard to approaching the person calmly and quietly, extremely important to approach them from the front and not the side or back.
Absolutely.
For that very reason.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they may have, again, the brain is not working, so it can't necessarily determine what's happening. So if you come at them from behind or the side where they can't necessarily figure it out in time, that can be very disruptive to them. That's a great point, yes. You want to come forward to them, and slowly. And avoid, again, correcting them as much as humanly possible. It just is. We were making cookies one time. We were making cuccidati, because he used to love cuccidati, and he just could not roll them correctly. And so I'm sitting there and I'm doing all the other stuff, and his job is to roll them. And so one time I told him, okay, this is how we roll them. And then he just went back to doing what he was doing, and I started to correct him, and then I thought, oh my God, seriously? We're gonna bake them, decorate them, and eat them. Who cares what they look like? So just give it up, let it go. It's not gonna keep them, if it is gonna keep them safe, then let it go. All right, so this is when you do the old journalism stuff, who, what, when, where, why. So who was there when the behavior took place? What happened just before the behavior began? Not really clear on after the behavior, but I guess see what they did after they had their behavior. When does the behavior usually happen? A lot of times you'll find it's sundowning. A lot of it is when the sun starts to go down. Unfortunately, behaviors get worse. Where did the behavior happen? So you want to look at the surroundings, the environment. How did I react to the behavior? So you want to really do an investigation, get as much information as you can about that. Then you're going to take care of physical needs. So absolutely, you're going to always start by looking for anything that's medical or physical. Did they have a fall recently? That does happen a lot with older adults and a lot of people with dementia also have other disease processes. They could have sensory impairment, they could have an injury to the foot. If you've got somebody with diabetes, that's very common, that they get a peripheral neuropathy and they can't feel. They've got blisters, they could have bleeding blisters, cuts, infections, all kinds of things. You want to see what you can do about figuring that out. You want them to be as comfortable as possible. Check if they're hungry. It's more common than not that people don't remember that they eat. So they may eat a lot. They may eat multiple breakfasts or lunches or dinners or lots of snacks, and so they may be getting an upset stomach from eating too much. And if it is anything that you think is medical or something that would need a doctor's care, then make sure you contact somebody for that. Then you're going to help with their emotional needs and try to figure out how they're feeling. That's very important. Offer comfort to them. Let them know that you're taking it very seriously. You're safe together. You're trying to make them more comfortable. My father used to see the craziest things. I think the craziest things were happening. There were planes on the ceiling. There were all kinds of things, and that's what we would do. We would always say, does it look like we're going to be in danger? Because should we move? Should we go to another room? Whatever it was, we went into that reality with him and then made sure he knew that we were taking him seriously and we were going to keep everybody safe with that. Now, redirecting is something always to give a shot. Now, at the same time, if somebody is highly stressed and repeating the behavior over and over and over for days, redirecting may not be the appropriate thing, but it's always worth a shot to give somebody something else to do, take them out of that situation and distract them. You'll know soon enough whether that worked or not, so it's always something to try. If they don't respond, again, let it go, try another time, do the very best you can, and move on. Review and plan for the next one. So you go back to detect and connect, go back to who, what, when, where, why, what did I try, what worked, what didn't work, how did they respond to it, who else can help. This is a tough one. A lot of times, as I said before, people aren't necessarily comfortable, and we want to get more people comfortable with dementia because dementia increases tremendously as you get older. By the time you're in your 90s, the percentage of people that get dementia is extremely high. Every decade after 70, it gets higher and higher. And at this moment, anyway, we've got a pretty good lifespan going for a lot of people. We certainly have a lot more people in their hundreds than we ever did before. So it's likely everybody's going to come in contact with them. So we need to get more people comfortable with that. But it is hard to bring somebody into a situation where you're not sure how they're going to be with somebody. So you want to try in small doses, bring people in to help you. Being a caregiver is extraordinarily stressful. It's a 24-hour-a-day situation as the disease progresses. You're constantly listening, you're constantly looking, you're constantly anxious as to what are they going to do, are they where they're supposed to be, are they safe and happy. So to have as much help as possible is good. And sometimes somebody else can be very effective when you cannot be. This is one of the things we're doing with my cousin's husband now, is because there's the husband-wife dynamic that sometimes is like this, even under good circumstances. He's not going to do that with me. So we'll swap out. So I'll go in and he's going to be lovely and charming with me. So that's a little bit of distraction there. So figure out who else might be successful with that. So now we're going to take those 4 types of behaviors and we're going to use the 4-step approach as we go through them. So with anxiety and agitation, we'll do the first step. So we'll take a look at anxiety and agitation. So what kind of situations could trigger this, okay, anxiety and agitation. Moving to a new residence, such as a nursing home, even going on vacation can do this, traveling can do this, going to somebody's house that, yes, they do know, but all of a sudden it feels strange to them. So being in a different environment can trigger that. Changes in caregivers, absolutely, any kind of a change. Believing something is a threat was very weird for me. My parents, many years ago, had gone on a 6-month adventure to find this particular chandelier that they absolutely adored. And it was a kind of a tarnished green metal with branches and leaves. And they were so proud when they finally got it. My father hooked it up in the dining room. Well, now many years later, the dining room became my father's bedroom, and I couldn't take down the chandelier. So he was in there. That was his new bedroom, and for all the world, he could not. That chandelier felt dangerous to him. I spent an entire night one day, moving everything around in the room until I figured that out. And then a neighbor helped me to switch it out for something else. But you don't know necessarily what it is that's going to cause somebody to feel like there's a threat to them or a danger to them. So it can take a lot of when, where, and why. Feeling afraid or tired from trying to make sense of the world around them, or isolated, can cause anxiety and agitation. So here's an example, and we're going to use detect and connect. So Eugene has dementia, and he lives with his daughter Denise. Most days he's in the living room and he does jigsaw puzzles, so it's just the two of them. But now her sister, his other daughter, and her sister's kids are coming for a visit from out of town. Kids are noisy and they're running around like kids will do. Eugene is very anxious and he does not want to come out of his room. He's happy where he is. So how could Denise detect and connect with Eugene? So we've got 4 options. 3 of them are the best. So number 1, to try to see the situation from Eugene's perspective. Does that seem like that would be a good one?
Yes.
Think about when Eugene's behavior started. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Consider if having noisy young children in the apartment is making him feel anxious. Yes. Get angry and assume he's just being difficult. So absolutely, she can detect and connect by using what she knows about his normal behavior, his normal routine, what he likes to do. And absolutely, her house guests have changed his environment. So now he's going to respond to that. And his way of responding is, I'm not coming out of my bedroom. All right, now aggression and anger. So what could cause that? Physical discomfort, the environmental factors, poor communication, not understanding what people are saying to you can make you extremely agitated, extremely agitated. So we're going to do physical needs now. So Sonia lives with, she has Alzheimer's disease, and she lives with her son Hector, and he recently hired a home care aide to help with her needs. Sonia has been yelling, however, the past couple of days now. He's been yelling at the aide during bath time. Hector remembers that the aide told him last week that Sonia fell while getting out of the bathtub. And now every time she's going into the bath, she starts yelling. So, how can Hector take care of Sonia's physical needs first to address her aggression? So which of these 2? Should he check for any injuries from her recent fall?
Yes.
Okay. Should he talk to Sonia's doctor and ask the doctor to check for an injury?
Yes.
Should he hire a different aide to help with Sonia?
Maybe.
See, now that is a possibility. At this point, probably not, because you're going to make a change. And we don't know that the aide has anything at all to do with it, except the aide is a change. Because it said recently he hired an aide. So is that the problem? But on your hierarchy, to look at something physical you want to look at for injuries. So in this case, it's the first two because we're looking for something physical. So it's checking for injuries or talking to the doctor to have him look for injuries because maybe it's a fracture that you can't see. So that's the deal there. So you don't want to necessarily assume it's the aid. All right, now suspicion and delusions. So what could cause that? Absolutely. All of a sudden their wallet is empty. Now it may well not be all of a sudden. It could be that they've had, for most of their lives, they've maintained their own wallet with credit cards and money, but because they've been losing money, giving money away, losing credit cards, they decided, well, that's not going to happen anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put $5 in the wallet. If they lose $5, we're not going to go broke here, but I'm going to take away the credit cards. We had the discussion, told him what was happening, but he doesn't remember any of that, and all of a sudden he goes to his wallet and it's empty. They may forget that they moved an item from one place to another, or some other very helpful person came in and tried to help by reorganizing things and moved things away from where he thinks or she thinks they should be. So any of those things now can trigger behaviors. So Clara's 85, she's got dementia. She lives with her daughter Irene. Recently she's been really nervously walking around the house, pacing up and down all over. She looks out of the windows in the afternoons. She often tells Irene, those people are out there again. They came in here last night and they took my purse. Irene tells Clara nobody's broken in and her purse is in the closet. It is not working, however. Clara keeps walking around and she's becoming more and more upset. All right, so now we're going to look at suspicion and delusion. How can we best address these? We're helping with her emotional needs at this point. So we're on to the third step, emotional needs. So can she distract Clara by asking her to set the table for dinner? How many people think yes? She can reassure Clara that she's safe and offer to check that all the doors in the house are locked. Yes. She can listen carefully to Clara's accusations and say that she's taking the problem seriously.
Yes.
Okay, well, we got a problem here. Because only 2 of these are the correct ones. So let's see. So distracting is not addressing necessarily her emotional needs at this point. It's been going on for multiple days. So if something is that kind of a behavior that has been happening for days, it's probably a good bet that distraction may not fix it because it's a deeper need than just going off into another room or doing another activity may not fix. So that's one of the things you just want to take a look at. You try distracting and then you'll see that she's going to still think about that. So one of the ways to also look at it is it happens in the afternoons. So it could be as we're looking towards dusk and sundown. If windows are open, somebody with dementia cannot necessarily say that that's a window and what they're looking out at. They may see reflections. They may see their own reflection. They may see your reflection and think it's someone outside. So they aren't able to distinguish some of those realities. And so if they see people inside the house and it looks like they're outside of the house, then one of the things you can do is you can close the windows as the sun begins to go down, or close the curtains so that they don't have that, or move them into a room where there isn't that. But sundowning is something that often takes place with people with dementia. Getting lost or wandering. So what could trigger that? Feeling physical discomfort or feeling restless, boredom, absolutely, lonely, looking for somebody in particular. That's very common with people. A relative that's moved out of state, an old childhood friend they may have a real need to connect with. Unmet needs such as using the toilet or being hungry. Fortunately, often people with dementia can't find their way to the kitchen, can't find the bathroom, can't use a bathroom successfully, can't use a toilet. So they know something's going on, they feel real antsy and agitated, and so they take off. So now what we're gonna do is we're doing the last step, we're reviewing and planning for next time. So here's a situation where we need to review what's happening and make a plan for next time. So Mei Ling is 69 years old with dementia. She lives with Kenji, her son, his wife, and their 2 young children, so her grandchildren. She used to run a flower shop before she retired. Her son notices that she walks back and forth when she's in the yard and she seems anxious. Once, she tried to leave the yard even when the family was outside with her. She tried to go next door into the neighbor's garden. So we're reviewing and planning for next time. Since there's a chance that she might try to leave the yard again, how can Mei Ling's family plan for next time? So we're looking for 3 that would be the best. So number 1, stay connected with Mei Ling while spending time outside. Support her with simple activities to reduce boredom. Sound like a good one or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Number 2, well, let's just avoid taking her outside and then we won't have this problem.
No.
Let's make the yard more attractive to her interests. Plant flowers she likes or bring in items that would be in a garden so it's more enticing for her to stay where she is.
Yes.
Tell the neighbor that Mei Ling is interested in their garden due to her former career. Make sure they have the phone number so that they can call if they find Mei Ling in their garden. And not written here is make sure that they know that she has dementia. That sound like a good one? Absolutely. Avoid taking her outside is not the answer to the problem. That's going to cause more boredom, more wandering, more behaviors. It's very important to tell as many people as you can about the dementia because you just don't know when wandering will take place. There are medical alert bracelets that you can have that will identify if somebody is having dementia. You do want to tell the local police department. You definitely want to tell your neighbors. Anywhere where somebody might go, you want to make sure they know.
While caregiving for my dad, I realized that one of the behaviors that he had related to his dementia was wandering. He would often feel restless and want to leave the house, sometimes at 5 in the morning, sometimes at 8 o'clock at night, or just at any point throughout the day. And at first I was very frustrated by this behavior and just would constantly tell him, Dad, you can't go out right now. We're not going out right now. But I realized over time that that was not working. And rather than telling my dad what he couldn't do, I had to put things into place, telling him what he could do, offering him a structured schedule, activities that were not overstimulating, and a schedule that really promoted him feeling calm and engaged throughout the day. Once I started doing this, it really helped to reduce the wandering.
Very good advice always to focus on the yes and not the no. Now, medical approaches. So you've probably seen there's a lot of commercials on television now for drugs. There's a lot of commercials on television for drugs for behaviors. And they are changing them and making them just a little bit better because when they first came out, they weren't good. So there's always drug side effects. But if somebody has an infection, if somebody's got something that's physically going on with them, they may absolutely need drugs. You just want to make sure you understand all the side effects and any interactions that could happen with medications they're already on. So you want to get as much information as possible. Uncorrected hearing or vision, absolutely. A lot of times people that don't hear well will answer questions inappropriately because they don't hear well. And they don't want to keep saying what, because people get really agitated with them. So they think they know what you said, and so they come up with an answer that's crazy, and then you start to worry about their mentation. Same thing with when you have vision problems. You may start to bump into things, fall, your driving may become erratic. It could be cataracts, it could be simple things like that. So you want to make sure that all of that is taken care of. Now, sometimes there are people that are having behavior problems. So if it's a behavior problem and it's situational and it's one of these things that we talked about, then changing the environment may be the perfect answer and you don't have to worry about that. However, some people do develop like a psychosis, and they cannot be calmed down. They cannot be brought back into a safe environment in their own minds, and so they may need some of those harsher medications. But that's not situational. That's for behavior that happens day after day after day after day. So when you see those commercials on television and the mother is smacking the daughter's hand away, it could be the daughter said something that ticked her off and she smacked her hand away. So if it's a one-time situation, let's not medicate her because it's not going to work anyway. But if she is constantly physically aggressive or living in this world that is very threatening to her, then medication may be the answer. But do listen to that whole commercial because they will tell you for most of these medications that older adults with dementia have a higher risk of death and stroke. So you want to make sure you understand everything about any medication that you might give to somebody. Again, could be necessary, but know as much as you possibly can about that. This is just homework that I'm not going to give you. Okay. So you may absolutely need to get outside help. Sometimes people can just become overwhelming to take care of. Some people are very compliant and they go along with everything. Other people are not. And that can change from day to day as well. But one thing is very sure is that if the disease progresses and something else doesn't happen, you are going to require 24-hour care because the body starts to shut down after the emotions, the behaviors, the memory shuts down. And so you're going to need care for that. So you need to be aware of that. And we have another program that I know you're going to get on exploring care and support services. So that's one to look at. Gun safety and 911. At one point, I worked as, we had nurse-run health centers in a number of planned retirement communities. And so we were the first responders. And on several occasions, I got calls like this. One time I got a call, and the family wanted us to go do a welfare check on their father who had dementia. And oh, by the way, he does have ammunition in the house, but we got rid of all the guns. So I said, well, thank you for telling me. However, I don't know that to be the case. I don't know that he didn't hide something from you. I don't know that he didn't get something in the meantime. I don't know that, so I will be taking the police with me because I'm not going into that situation. Now, the other side of that is not all police departments are very skilled with dealing with dementia, so that can be a real challenge. So the best thing to do is get everything out of the house because you never know when you will need it. It could even be as simple as you're calling 911 because somebody else in the house is having chest pain or a respiratory problem, and all of a sudden there's lights outside and there's people coming into the house, and that scares the person with dementia, and they're going to protect. And so they may take out a weapon, not understanding what the situation is. So having weapons out of the house is really, really the best thing that you can do for everybody involved. Everything that we have, the Alzheimer's has, is free of charge. It's available to everybody. There is a 24/7 helpline. There are people that are skilled with answers, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are different resources available. One thing I am going to say is it can be a very confusing website, which is kind of ironic for a dementia thing. It is a confusing website. I have a hard time finding things out there. So down here where we have /care/safety/driving, those are very, very helpful. They take you right to that kind of place. everybody safe in the home. There's lots of great information about that. Driving is a massively difficult situation. There's a lot of people on the road who should not be driving. There's a lot of people on the road with dementia who should not be driving. So we want to, if it comes your turn to have to talk to somebody, that's a good place to go to get a lot of information to get that started as to how to get a safety check, how to approach it. I had to do it with my father. Miserable. Absolutely, that was high on the list of the worst times ever. But I didn't want him dead. I didn't want anybody else dead. And I used an example. Another cousin, her father had dementia, and unfortunately they did not take the keys away from him. And he hit somebody. And my aunt and uncle were about to lose their home because they were gonna get sued. Another thing that can happen is if you know that your person has dementia and you haven't done anything about it, you know how litigious we are in this world, that lawsuit can expand to other people. So there's a lot of good reasons to protect everybody, to try to take keys away as much as possible. Yes?
Just as a suggestion, my brother-in-law's father insisted on driving, and they didn't want him for that very reason, because of dementia. So they gave him a set of keys that belonged to a different car. So his car was always in need of repair, but he couldn't drive it, and he had keys, so it felt
Yes.
like he was in control, even though the car didn't work.
Yes.
At least they kept him off the street.
Yes, a lot of people disconnect the battery, they disconnect something else in there because it's important for the person to see the car. I did something similar with my father. Really, I lived on the edge. I don't know every day how we managed to get through because I made him promise me. That he wouldn't drive because I took the keys away and he was mad. He was really mad. And I didn't want him to live the rest of his life being mad. So I gave him back the keys. The rest of the family was, what the hell are you doing? But he kept his word. He never, ever. He would always stop by the chest on the way out the door and take the keys when we were going out, but he never, ever tried to drive. I do not recommend doing that. I was just extraordinarily lucky that he didn't do it. So doing something like that is very good. Make that car immobile if possible.
If you disconnect the battery, if he's a mechanic of any sort, he would be smart enough to remember long distance, a pass number, how to reconnect the battery, so a different set of keys would probably be better.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options. Again, it's knowing your person and knowing what their skill level is, what their understanding is. Okay, any questions? Look at that. I'm just 1 minute over. Very unusual for me.
That was
Thank
very
you
good.
very much.